والسلام على سيد المرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. سبحانك لا فهم لنا إلا ما فهمتنا إنك أنت الجواد الكريم. قل ربي زدني علما. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. ولهن مثل الذي عليهن بالمعروف وللرجال عليهن درجة والله عزيز حكيم. صدق الله مولانا العظيم. So now inshallah today hopefully we'll continue this discourse, otherwise we could carry on with this discourse for days, if not weeks, if not months. A very, very comprehensive topic here. So once again, just to reiterate the basic meaning of the ayat, and then we'll look into a few more details inshallah. So وَلَهُنَّ مِثْلُ الَّذِي عَلَيْهِنَّ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ. And so for them, the women, is the like of which is upon them in terms of rights and responsibilities. بِالْمَعْرُوفِ. And this word bil-ma'ruf, very comprehensive meaning, what is understood, what is known, what is the custom, what is inferred by Sharia, etc. So it's a very comprehensive concept which is identified or is represented by a single word. وَلِلرِّجَالِ عَلَيْهِنَّ دَرَجَةٌ. And again, the men upon the women have a higher status, a status of authority, a status of responsibility, and a status of accountability. Wallahu Azizun Hakim. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is all powerful, almighty, all capable of doing whatever He intends. At the same time, Hakim, totally wise, perfect wisdom in all that He has ordered and all that He has done and that He does and will be doing. So a few more points. So this whole concept, we need to be very clear on this concept. What do we mean that men are above women? Does it mean that men by basic nature are better than women? Or does it mean that they have the hierarchy, as we mentioned earlier? For example, you have a president and a vice president. So the assumption is that the president is supposed to be of a higher level than the vice president. However, the vice president might be a more virtuous person than the president, which happens in many cases, right? So having more authority and responsibility doesn't necessarily mean that you are, in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, better. So the men and women, in terms of hierarchy, there is where the difference, is, and there's where the concept of a higher level of authority and responsibility and accountability. On the other hand, in terms of rights and in terms of position with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's according to their belief and actions. مَنْ عَمِلَ صَالِحًا مِنْ ذَكَرٍ أَوْ أُنْثَى وَهُوَ مُؤْمِنٌ فَلَنُحْيِيَنَّهُ حَيَاةً طَيِّبَةً وَلَنَجْزِيَنَّهُمْ أَجْرَهُمْ بِأَحْسَنِ مَا كَانُوا يَعْمَلُونَ. Whoever does righteous action from men or from women, and they are believers and they have iman, then they will be going to get a beautiful life and positions in the hereafter, and we'll give them the best of their deeds. So in terms of ajr, in terms of actual value and worth, in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, close proximity with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that they are equal in respect of, they have the ability to go ahead, they have also the ability to go behind. So that should be understood. Also, the masculine is used, right? Generally, declaring these injunctions, usually the masculine tense is used, but obviously this includes the women as well. It may infer also two things. Number one, that fact that we were talking about the higher status. At the same time, the discourse in the Quran and generally the habit of Muslims is to protect the name as well as the persons of their women folk. And therefore, you don't find in the Quran the mention of the names of women specifically. Therefore, even in our tradition, we don't generally call our lady folks in public by their actual name, unless there's some reason for that. We say Ummu Fulana, right? And we mentioned that my wife or Ummu Fulana, and protecting her, not only her physical person, but actually, the whole concept or the whole, her name and everything about her is to be protected and is to be preserved for the chastity and the honor and the reverence, for our women folk. Not like the Western world, which in the name of, women's liberation, which we mentioned is women's degradation, throwing women out there, for the eyes to be feasted on everyone. By the way, it's also very apparent, in the name of women's liberation, to strip the woman of her modesty, her chastity, and throw her out there in front of the eyes of men, and it's become the custom. It's very interesting that the custom in the society now is that women should be more naked than men. It was traditionally, up until, say, at least 100 years ago, if not more, that women were always more covered and were kept more chaste and modest than men folk. Now it's the exact opposite. Women are expected to show themselves totally. This is total degradation, humiliation. In other words, you, poor woman, are just an object for the feasting of men's eyes and beyond that. So Islam protects their integrity, their chastity, their honor, and their dignity. So this is very critical that we must understand that. It's my body, I do with what I want. It's not your body, by the way. You didn't create it, you don't sustain it. It's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's creation and amana. It's a trust that we have, whether we're men or women. So also interestingly, that there's a riwayat of Salama radiallahu ta'ala anha. She's mentioned, Ya Rasulullah, that men are mentioned, the men that do this, the men that do that. What about the women? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also in certain ayats, He mentions, إِنَّ الْمُسْلِمِينَ وَالْمُسْلِمَاتِ وَالْمُؤْمِنِينَ وَالْمُؤْمِنَاتِ وَالْقَانِتِينَ وَالْقَانِتَاتِ. So sometimes the men and women are mentioned. And this also highlights the fact that in terms of qualities, in terms of rank with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there's an equal standing and equal status. Now, another thing is, وَلَهُنَّ مِثْلُ الَّذِي عَلَيْهِنَّ. So first of all, for them are rights which are similar that are upon them. So their rights are mentioned first before the rights of the men. Any clue why? Obviously, men, being stronger physically and tend to dominate, there is more likelihood of them neglecting the observation of the rights of the women. And this is from time immemorial until this very day. And a lot of us are guilty of that. So men should take the first initiative and should take the first step in protecting the rights of the women and giving them their rights. And at the same time, as Nabi alayhi salatu mentioned, because of the emotional nature of women, for their portfolio, which they need to have, they need to be more geared and motivated by emotion rather than, reason. Because if you have to stay up all night with the kids, the men would, go find another room to sleep in. But the women, because of their stronger emotional attachment, they oversee all of those difficulties, and they're able to actually remain in that position of motherhood and love and affection and caring. So, because of that nature, being motivated more by nature, generally speaking, than intellect, so there's going to be discrepancies, there's going to be shortcomings. So men should do what? Forgive, forget, and overlook. Be sure that they're fulfilling their rights, and the women also are exhorted to fulfill their rights. If there's shortcoming from either side, then there should be indulgence and there should be tolerance. And then last but not least, bil ma'ruf. وَلَهُنَّ مِثْلُ الَّذِي عَلَيْهِنَّ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ. Ma'ruf. What is this? Urf. What the Shariat says, what human nature demands, what are the customs. So it's not just that we give them their, give them their nafaqah, that we give them their expenses, we put a roof over their head, we feed them, and then we treat them crassly and with coldness and indifference. All of those things are coming into play here. Not only the Shari rights, but basic human rights, how the feelings and the emotions, looking after that and treating them with the kindness and affection. And by the way, the needs of women and the needs of men are different. The basic needs, even though they're basic and they all have similar needs, but priorities are different. Women, the most important thing for them is the show of affection and the show of understanding. They want someone to understand them, to show them affection and show them appreciation. Whereas men have other priorities, you see. So we need to understand that the nature which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as He mentions, Azizun Hakim. He has done everything with His power and might and with His wisdom. So we need to understand that wisdom as far as humanly possible and act accordingly. And bihi at-tawfiq wa akhir da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.